So triple bottom line thinking is a concept. The phrase was coined by this brilliant environmentalist, John Elkington, and he wrote the first Green Consumer Guide back in 1987. And he then coined this phrase, triple bottom line, and that is the balance between making some profit, but also looking at people and the planet. When I grew up, no one in the UK owned a television. We didn't own them, we all rented them from 2 or 3 companies. One of them called Radio Rentals, for example. So you paid a monthly fee and they gave you the television. They would repair it, and then at the end of its life they would take it away and you would just get the next version. And we've been persuaded to live in a world where everybody just buys a television, and then at the end of its life we're going, well, what do I do with my television? And it's become our problem rather than the companies who are providing that, because it's a service. I don't want to own a television.
We keep hearing about the bottom line impact or the profit that a company makes. ITC's bottom line grew by X%. Tata's new strategy to increase its profits. But have you heard about the triple bottom line? Replace profit with people, planet, and profit. Today's guest has spent a lifetime enabling impact, from building surfers against sewage to cutting down on single-use supplies at Eden Project in UK. He talks about using media coverage to reach public agenda, and from public agenda to political agenda, with sheer willpower and grunt. Plug in as we hear Chris Hines talk about his story in sustainability. Hi, Chris. Welcome to the discussion that we are just about to have.
Good morning. Lovely to be talking to you in India, so from Cornwall.
Good to have you here. Would love to know about your background, if there's something specific from your childhood or the journey that you've had. I believe you've been in the domain of environment for over 30 years now. So, what have your learnings been so far?
Um, I'd say the biggest natural thing that occurred was a connection to nature. So I was very lucky. My parents, from a very young age, took us out into the natural environment. So I had a love of open spaces and nature, but also a real big love of the ocean. So then back in 1990, we formed this organisation called Surfers Against Sewage because our beaches were dreadfully polluted. Literally, what was flushed down the toilets was going straight into the sea, and we were bathing and surfing and swimming in this. So we asked the authorities what they were going to do about it, and they said, nothing, it's all fine, go away. Well, being a bunch of surfers, we weren't going to take that as an answer. So we set off to kind of campaign, and we used what I refer to as intelligent activism. We only know that looking back, but we ran a kind of multifaceted campaign using the law, politics, science, engineering, and in a way using all the tools that are used to create the version of the world that wasn't working very well. And we learned to use some of those tools and use them better. And we were also we worked a lot with the media. So we understood that in order to drive positive change, you have to create the stories. And the other big thing that we did was to go and find the solution. So it's easy to protest. That's one thing. But the difficult, but also more important thing, I think, is to find the solution, the alternatives, because the water companies wanted to just build big pipes and dump the sewage further out to sea. And we knew that that would still mean that the sewage was infectious. So we looked for an alternative to that. And then we had to articulate that. So I even duck dived into the mouth of 100,000 people's sewage. But it was fully treated with UV disinfection, this new technology that had come through. So finding the solution and articulating it is a really important part of it. And one of the myths, I think, that needs popping a bit is that people often say that to do the right thing environmentally is more expensive, but sometimes it's cheaper just in the straight immediate cost, but especially if you take into the round the social and environmental benefits of what you're doing and the costs that don't come your way because of kind of damage to the environment or damage to society. So I think those were kind of key lessons from that time.
Great. You've mentioned in one of your interviews how you leveraged media coverage to get public agenda, and then when you reached the public agenda, it transformed into political agenda. So that seems like a very smart way to hustle your way around into the ecosystem.
Yes, I think you know, if you can drive things up, especially if it's a small group. I mean, we were surfing was very tiny back in the UK. It's grown as a sport. It's more popular now. But we knew that all those images of surfing were used to, you know, sell washing powder and beer. And we even surfed the net. All those kind of references to surfing. So we knew that if we knew our story and we knew our soundbite well, and we used to wear wetsuits, but with gas masks, put gas masks on, and we had a 10-foot inflatable poo, that we would go. And behind that, we had to have our story. We had to know our facts and figures. But then when you drive things up the public agenda by using the media, that drives it up the political agenda. And we even got to the point where one of our members rang up. We used to have 18,000 members, and one of our members rang up and said, I'm a script writer for this program called BBC Casualty. And BBC Casualty, when it went out, so we helped him work on a script. And when that program went out, it was going out to 14 million viewers at prime time on a Saturday evening, you know, absolutely prime time. It was one of the biggest television drama shows in Britain at that time. But it was our script, it was our story woven through. And that really drives things up the kind of the agenda, put that concisely and create that vision of where we want to go. And you do it with some passion, bit of humor every now and then as well. And you learn to do that media coverage well. It's very powerful.
I think the question that you've pursued is, can surfing change the world? And in a very metaphorical way, I think the question for everyone else is, can I really change the world doing what I enjoy doing and yet create an impact? So I think the difference is impact and intent. So once you have the intent to do something, I mean, there are all sorts of ways that you enjoy the journey, you enjoy the process, yet really create a positive impact. So thanks for everything that you do. I think raising the voice, noticing what's going wrong, and hence taking the initiative, it's a great start to change the world as we seem it to be.
Yeah. I think if you have two sets of people talking and one of them is attractive, if you walked into a room and there's two sets of people almost talking about the same issue, and one of them are passionate and have an infectious quality of passion and enthusiasm, compared to the others, if they were dour and too serious and they're not creating that vision and that passion, you will naturally go to the one that is a bit more engaging. So that is one of the things that we kind of have to do, I think. And it's not to say that our story, the campaign that we do is cheap or throwaway or flippant. It's serious work, but we have to do it with an attractiveness so that other people feel, yeah, I want to support them. That's the right thing to go and do. Yeah.
You've also spoken quite extensively about linear economy and circular economy, and it becomes even more relevant as resources become, so as to say, scarce. I mean, it seems that they are not scarce, but in essence, if you do the weigh-ins, they are not really as easily available, as cheaply available as they were. And when I say cheap, easy, I don't really mean the terms of just the pound value, the dollar value, but the cost that it has to the world in a longer perspective as well. So would you like to elaborate a little more about your perspective on linear economy versus circular economy?
So I think the linear economy, I mean, when I was born in 1962, I'm 61 years old. The global population then was 3.9 billion people. So in my lifetime, it's doubled. And if I go back to my gran and granddad, I've got a picture, they got married 101 years ago. And the population then was 1.9 billion. So a quarter of the number of people. And I think the linear economy, this take, make, dump, and all you care about is yourself or your company or going forwards, and you're just making profit. We could kind of get away with it, but we can't do that anymore. It's a finite planet with finite resources. There's 8 billion of us living here. So, of course, we've got to recycle things into this circular economy to make sure that when we design something, we know exactly what's going to happen at the end of it, that we're going to hold on to those materials, whatever they might be, whether they're if they're compostable or they're food, then they go back into the natural cycle. But if they're technical and they're materials such as plastics or metals or semi-precious metals and all those kind of things, those need to go back in. I mean, we're hearing this debate in the UK at the moment about vaping and little single-use vapors that people use. Now, that single-use vape thing has plastics, but it also has a little tiny lithium battery in it. And yet, and the local councils, the authorities who have to do the recycling, they can't get to that bit of lithium anymore. And when you then take, as you were kind of leaning into, the triple bottom line of this, that if you then take the financial cost, yep, you've got to do that, but you then look at the social cost and the environmental cost of products and the way we live and everything, those drive the balance between absolutely not being able to use the linear economy anymore. And there's a great quote from in a book by Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England. He wrote a book, and there's a quote in there from an economist, Sir John Kay, and it says, "Profit is no more the purpose of business than breathing is the purpose of living." Now, that's not to say you don't need to make profit, but you need to make profit in a way that keeps everything that goes back in. And another one that and a classic of this was when I grew up, no one in the UK owned a television. We didn't own them. We all rented them from 2 or 3 companies. One of them called Radio Rentals, for example. So you paid a monthly fee and they gave you the television. They would repair it. And then at the end of its life, they would take it away and you would just get the next version. And we've been persuaded to live in a world where everybody just buys a television. And then at the end of its life, we're going, well, what do I do with my television? And it's become our problem rather than the companies who are providing that, because it's a service. I don't want to own a television. I want to be able to watch programs. And there's a difference. And one sits within a circular economy a lot better. And the other one is just about making profit, really, and pushing the problem onto us and pushing the problem onto councils and government authorities who have to go and do that recycling.
You just mentioned a very interesting word, triple bottom line. So
Yes.
I think for people who don't come from the relevant background, bottom line in business means profit. How much does the company generate in profits? And triple bottom line, and you've spoken quite extensively about it, means people, planet, and profit. So how do you optimize for profit, but yet not negate people and the impact on the planet?
Yes.
So I believe at one of your past stints at the Eden, you leveraged this to save one of your contractors money while still using lesser of the single-use cardboards. So do you want to recount one of that stories? Because I think that is a perfect example of how this works.
So triple bottom line thinking is a concept that the phrase was coined by this brilliant environmentalist who I'm very proud to know. I don't know him particularly well, but I would say I know John Elkington, and he wrote the first Green Consumer Guide back in 1987. He wrote a book called Holidays That Don't Cost the Earth. That's how I met John. And he then coined this phrase, triple bottom line. And that is the balance between making some profit, but also looking at people and the planet. When I was at the Eden Project, there were no waste management facilities. And one of the big things that we did, so we just went in and examined all of our waste. And again, like, even though I was kind of like the director, I got in there, I put my dirty clothes on, and we got into all the bin bags and went all through the waste systems of everything and where all our waste was. And the first thing that occurred was that we have 1.9 million visitors a year. So, and a lot of those people bought pasties. So pasties are a Cornish pastry with a kind of a meal tied up in the pastry. And so we were probably ordering, 500,000 pasties a year were coming to our site. And they were coming every single day in cardboard boxes. So single-use cardboard, and the cardboard could be recycled, but it was still cardboard. So we went back to the bakery, and said, could you bring them to us on baking trays? So that we use those baking trays every day. And they saved themselves about £26,000 just on the rental of the storage unit to store boxes in. And then the second thing we did with the triple bottom line was a classic example. Every single spoon, cup, fork, plate at the Eden Project was single use. They were brown, they were, recycled material, so they looked like they were doing the right thing, but they were still actually just single use and go straight to landfill. So we looked at the triple bottom line of putting in a dishwasher and changing to, proper crockery and metal cutlery and things. And the headline figures were that environmentally, by putting in the dishwasher and cups and plates and knives and forks, metal, we saved we reduced our landfill by 8 tons a year. We reduced the carbon and material impact of manufacture and transportation to us. Socially, we created 2 jobs that didn't exist. We gave people a nicer cup of tea because they could have it out of a proper cup. And we didn't see it coming, but suddenly, because our plates were made of china, you could put salad on them. So then financially, we sold more tea, we sold more salad, and we saved ourselves £159,000 over a 5-year period. So doing the right thing, especially if you look at the round, that's triple bottom line in practice.
Thank you. I think when a business looks at cost, right now what's not being factored in is the cost to the planet. And that's something I think that should and would change over time with carbon credits coming in. I think more systems would come in place. I'll give you a specific example. During certain parts of the year in Delhi, the pollution becomes really bad.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not pointing towards any specific business or initiative that causes that change, but the rest of the populace ends up buying air purifiers, staying indoors. So there's direct economic cost to everyone else for the pollution that exists over there. And as businesses become more mindful of the cost of their goods, not just being limited to the cost of goods, but the cost to the environment, I think that is going to drive change. And I think carbon credits is one good initiative, but there can be a lot more that can be done on that side. You've spoken about renewable energy as well. So what do you think? Do you feel that we are maybe a couple of decades away from having a pure, clean, renewable energy grid? What's your perspective on that?
I'm sure we can do it in a couple of decades. We must do it. And I think we must, that must be an absolute commitment from everybody to drive that as quickly as possible. We've got to be slightly realistic, but then it was unrealistic to think that a bunch of surfers would create the change that we managed to help change. So being slightly unrealistic is a good thing, especially with targets. And, of course we can do that. Of course, we can create these technologies and these systems. The work that you do, just making the systems even more efficient. We have the ingenuity as a species to do amazing things, if you look at the world. And so we can do this. And I think I heard someone speak recently and they said that, it won't be long before executive pay of big companies is linked to their carbon and climate performance. Now that will start to really drive things, because if people's executive remuneration, the money they get, is affected by how well they treat the planet, obviously that should be the way. And I think we we need to drive these tools and encourage these tools through. And there will always be some businesses that will lead the way, and they'll be the people who and the companies that influence the thinking of governments and legislators. And they will also, those companies, be the people who attract and retain the best staff, because the best brains are going to go and work for the best company.
I think you've done a commendable job, for a lack of a better word, hustling through the problems that you saw and then creating change in whatever capacity that you could. And it gained traction. It did create impact at scale. What would you advise people who would be listening to this and would probably be busy in their own jobs, busy in their own lives, probably have passion towards something but not have the bandwidth or the intent to create change at scale? But what can they do at their own little levels? What can they do at their own homes, their own lives to really, take this initiative forward, create a little more love for the environment and for the planet?
We all have power, and even at times when it feels overwhelming, the challenges facing us, if every one of us does a little bit, that is a big bit. The collective force of millions and billions of people doing small actions for positive change creates a massive amount of positive change. So it is things like being very mindful of what just taking even if it's taking an extra minute before you make a decision as to whether to buy something, what you're going to buy. Do you really want it?
Something that's helped me personally is consuming less, wanting less, and ensuring that the love that I have with the planet is not unrequited. It's not one-sided love wherein I get everything that I need from the planet, but the planet doesn't get anything back. So that's something that's helped me personally as a guiding principle towards what I do every day.
Yeah, no, that's lovely. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Oh, that's a pleasure.
Thanks a lot for your time today.
Oh, thank you ever so much, Jaspreet. Good luck with everything that you do. Give our love to the beagles.
As we wrap up today's episode, remember, small actions lead to big change. Our choices today compound to define the world's future. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this valuable, please share it with a like-minded friend. Also, please consider leaving a comment, as that really helps other listeners to find the podcast. See you in the next episode. Till then, choose cleaner, choose better.